Hey guys, welcome to Keep On Pushing TV. Yeah, man, I am your host, Devon Harris. And as always, we share ideas and insights that are going to challenge you and inspire you to keep on pushing and live your absolute best life. Because guess what? We want that for you. We want that of you and from you. So if you want that from yourself, yeah, you are in the right place. So again, welcome to Keep On Pushing TV. My guest today has over 15 years of progressive experience in the business world, spanning multiple industries, including transportation, maritime, manufacturing, advertising, residential services, EPC, solar energy. He's a founder and CEO of TRJ Consulting, which provides executive support to small and medium-sized companies, not only to maintain growth and stability, but also to evaluate future obstacles as well as future opportunities. They focus on providing a strategic assessment of the businesses, the clients they work with, and then offer multiple solution-based ideas and processes. And so I'm really excited, really pleased to welcome my friend, Trevor Andersen, to Keep On Pushing. Trevor, welcome.
Well, thank you, Devin. I appreciate it, man. Happy Monday to you, right? Monday morning, ready to go.
It is Monday morning. It's a great way to start the week, I think, speaking to someone who definitely, has a keep on pushing story, as I like to call it, to tell. So let's go back a little bit, Trevor. Tell us about your early years. So now you're this high-flying CEO, but we want to know,
yeah, right?
we want to know about Trevor before he became that CEO.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm a pretty normal guy. I grew up in Toms River, New Jersey. I grew up brother and a sister, mom and dad. The traditional family lifestyle. If I look at me, what makes me a little bit unique is I went through some pretty interesting stuff when I was in my teenage years going into college. So, TRJ was branded by some personal family tragedy for me and my family. So I lost my brother in a tragic car accident when I was 16. And then shortly after, a few years, right before I finished college, I lost my father, Richard and Jared. So that's Trevor, Richard, Jared. That's how that name came about. And, it really kind of transformed me. So, I was a pretty average guy. I went to school originally to be a landscape architect. And, I then changed my major to business. But along the way, I found this unique spark that made me me. And really what that value was working with people and really helping them identify their problems, whether they be financial or not, and really how to solve them. So I've always kind of had that mentality my entire life throughout college, early part of my career, and into now, what I'm doing now for my clients and my startups. That's a little bit kind of broad around what I've been doing.
Completely. So, on this program, Keep On Pushing, we talk about the fact that we want to bring to the program and to our audience, Olympic athletes and, thought leaders and so on and so forth. And you describe yourself as a very ordinary guy. And I think that's important as well, because, so many times people ask me, so who is it that inspires you? And I would say, well, everybody, the people that are famous and well-known, but also the very ordinary guy. Because most of us are very ordinary guys and gals. So thank you again for being on the show, but for being so real. So let's go back a little bit to your, I guess, late teenage years, early college years. You lost your brother and your father in relatively quick succession. Talk to us about the relationships that you had with both of these men.
Well, my brother, unfortunately, so I was a little bit younger. So he was my older brother. So I was 16 and he was 18 when he passed away. And, it's that stereotypical, when you're going through high school, you're separated by a couple years. So he's hanging out with the cool kids. I felt like I was a little bit of a dork trying to hang out with him. And, we kind of went our own different ways. And, right before the accident happened, we were kind of starting to mold. It was really kind of nice. I mean, I didn't have a lot of great time with him in my older years when I was a young kid. Obviously, we played and grew up together, but it really kind of cemented what I needed. And I think, everything happens for a reason. I'm a big believer of that, Devon. Like everything in this world happens for a reason. And, if that didn't happen, I don't think it would kind of push me out of my shell so much and make me, because I was like an introvert. I was a swimmer in high school, but I had some friends, but, I was a little bit more introverted. But then when my brother passed away and I got to meet a lot of his friends and really started developing my own relationships, it almost like blossomed me a little bit. It made me a man very quickly. I had to kind of step up inside the family and take care of things quite a bit. It did shake me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie to you. I wish I was, a solid rock, but I think it's part of my path. Everyone's got their journey, as I said before, and that was one of the starts of my journey. And to be completely honest, I don't think I would have went down to school in the Carolinas if that didn't happen, because I wanted to get away. I wanted to be free. Once I graduated high school, like, let me go. I got to go. I got to do things. You know what I mean? That's kind of what led me to my next step.
So something tragic happened to you, but, they often say, hey, it's not so much what happens to you, but how you choose to deal with it, how you respond to it. And so here it is that you're just getting close with your brother again, and you lost him, but you didn't allow that to derail you. In fact, you said as a result of that tragedy, you blossomed.
Yeah.
And so I guess in part of you dealing with that situation was you deciding to go away to school. And then during that time, you lost your dad. So speak to us a little bit about that too.
Yeah. So my dad was my best friend. I mean, hands down foremost, I've never met a man. Obviously he's my role model. He was my everything. He's my Superman. He always looked out for me, always took care of me. I learned so much from this guy. I think he really cemented my world in the art of a great business relationship, where he would take care of people. People would come to him no matter what the cost, price, just because he did such a great job and he was such a good person, deep down inside. It's hard to compete with that. Mm-hmm. So, I go down to school and, I'm meeting a bunch of friends down there, and this is cool. It's great, right? Unfortunately, my father had lymphoma cancer for, I think, about 15 years. So he got chemo and he would fight it. I mean, the man would get chemo and he'd go to the gym almost right afterwards. He'd be like liquid blue and he'd be benching 300 pounds. Mm-hmm. Like, obviously, as you can tell, great role model for everybody. And it got kind of weird, like towards the end of my career, he got very sick in college, and I had to make this choice, going back and forth, going home, coming back, to take care of him. And he told me, right before he passed away, about 2 weeks before, he's like, Trev, listen, you got to finish. Like, I don't want you staying here with me. And this is right in my senior year. So mm-hmm. already maxed out the days I could take off. I maxed out all the time out of my professors, all the extended deliverables. And he said, listen, you got to do it. You got to, this is you. Like, I'm going to be here for you always and forever. Like, you got to keep going, keep on pushing. Mm-hmm. And I said to myself, all right. So I go back to school, I'm in class, a week later, I get the phone call from my mom. My dad passed away, and it hit me like this. That was a lot harder than losing my brother, because I was very close to my dad. And I didn't know what to do. So I immediately came back up home. We did the funeral. I saw people, and I pretty much thought I was done. So I get a call from one of my professors, and she asked me some questions about what was going on if I was coming back. And I go, listen, I don't think I could do this. I can't finish my final in time, or whatever the case was. And she goes, listen, like, it's not policy, and, I can help you. So she extended my time. And to be honest, if I didn't have someone like that do that right then and there, that selfless kind of act, I would have never been where I am today, because I would have never graduated. I would have had any reason to go back down to school. I would have just stayed home. Yeah.
So you're saying that, all of us need that, guardian angel, right? That in our lives at time, especially during some of the darkest moments in our lives, right?
Yeah. I mean, listen, he's my father, my brother have been watching on my shoulders ever since. They've really guided me along the way. And to be quite honest, Devon, like I said, everything happens for a reason. If my father didn't pass away and then I didn't come home after I finished school, I would have never met my wife. Like shortly inside a year of me coming home, I met my wife.
Yeah.
she was my girlfriend back then, but she's my wife now. But I mean,
Yeah.
I would have stayed in South Carolina. I liked it down there, had a great group of friends. I still talk to all of them, great people. But I mean, I was developing a career down there and a life. And
Mhm.
if you don't have those circumstances, like people are very short-sighted sometimes. They don't see the larger picture or what's past that next hurdle. And I'll be honest with you, man, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And people got to keep that in mind because that's kind of how I go through my world. It's how I work in my business model.
Yeah. So even during the times of our greatest pain, there's always joy at the end of the journey.
Yeah, always is.
What would you say is perhaps the greatest lesson you have learned from that painful period of your life, Trevor?
I think patience. I think patience because, I was very much, I want it to happen now. And, you realize that you only have so many minutes on this earth, right? Things are taken very quickly and to value every minute. So you start to become a little bit more patient and you're not stressing about the next possible thing. I think for me, learning that early on, I felt like I felt like I was 50 years old when I was 22 in a
Yeah.
good way, an absolute great way. Like the life experiences, the relationships, the know-how, like I started to understand things a bit more because I started to just sit down and look at problems from different angles and
Yeah.
really just take my time with things.
So you wanted to be a landscape architect, you said earlier, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's how it started out.
Um, but you kind of switched
Yeah,
paths.
just a little bit switch.
Yeah, first of all, why landscape architecture,
All
and
right.
how did the switch take
Well, so a good friend of mine and I had a landscape business, and we had a couple of clients, and I loved it. But I love the design aspect and computers and technology. So I'm like, well, what am I going to go to school for? I didn't, I don't. My father told me adamantly, don't be in the car industry world. I kind of wanted to follow through his
Yeah,
footsteps.
how old were you when you had your architecture business?
It was like 16, 17. So a friend and I, we had a truck, go around, do landscaping, odds and end projects for people's in our neighborhoods. And, I really enjoyed it. And I like the design, the strategy of it. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll do this. I enjoy it, I'm doing it. And I get down to school and, it's a big change for me. I'm going to school. I went to Coastal Carolina University. It was right next to Myrtle Beach. Immediately the weather's beautiful all the time there. And I'm like, man, this is interesting. And I was telling my mom and dad, and I was like, man, if I'm going to run a business, I really need a business background. And they both agreed. And we had this, like, it's almost like this crazy moment. It's like, oh man, I'm just going to switch. It was almost like instantaneously. I went to the administration department. I changed some of my things around, and basically I switched right then and there within inside of a few months being down at school.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know I needed that business background to really do anything in life, especially in business. So that's what I majored in management. I didn't even major in finance or accounting. I specifically majored in management.
Yeah. So you move back and you're getting your career started. Talk to us about that journey.
Yeah. So I come back from home, I come back from school, and I'm trying to figure out, so what do I do? Right. I interned in college at a hedge fund in distressed debt. I'm like, well, maybe I'll pursue that angle. And a good friend of mine owned a small flower shop. He owned an investment company that owned flower shops. And I was talking to him one day. I'm like, listen, I went to school for this. This is what I think I could provide. He's like, well, why don't we partner up? Okay, great, man. Let's try it. You know what I mean? So I got my first real job working as in management around flower shops. So I got to see customer service. I got to see front end operations, point of sale systems, inventory management. I got a real cool broad education for my first job. We bought a store. I led that store. Then we found another store. So when I left there, we had 3 locations. And I kind of bounced between them, kind of help run the day-to-day as well as kind of work the client side as well. I even did deliveries too. Devon, I did everything. I mean, literally did everything. I took out the trash sometimes. That was really my first shot into business. And I said, this is great. But I wanted more, as every guy does when they're young. I want to be in the city where everything's happening. So I put some more feelers out there, and I get a call from an advertising company. And, went through the interview process, and I wound up getting hired. So probably just shortly after, maybe a year or so afterwards, I started working at a company called Young Rubicam right in Midtown Manhattan. Let me tell you how fun it is to commute from Toms River, New Jersey to 41st and Madison.
Yeah.
It was roughly anywhere between 5 to 7 hours a day of commuting. And that was on good days, especially when there was snow or whatever. It was basically an 8-hour day of commuting.
Mm-hmm. That is some serious commuting, man. What were you doing at this company? Were you doing advertising, PR, or?
So I was a client finance manager. So I worked with developing the budgets, the staffing plans, the pricing proposals for the clients. So when I was there, our bigger clients were LG, Green Mountain, Twinings Tea, some of the bigger names out there.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd figure out, hey, I'd need a creative director. For how many hours are you going to need the creative director? And what are we going to be doing in that scope of time? So I'd be behind the scenes administratively working with our operations team and the client as well.
Yeah.
So
you're an entrepreneur now. How many years did you spend in corporate America?
15 years, something like that. I mean, I went, I bounced to another job in New York. Then that company went to Chicago. So I flew back and forth to Chicago for 6 months straight every week. And then ultimately found my larger gig at Ports America, where I really got a good opportunity to meet people. And that's where I met one of my biggest mentors in my life, Devon, since my father, a gentleman by the name of Jason. He really took me under his wings. I'm a younger guy. I'm hungry. I know a lot of things, but he gave me the opportunity to teach me about things I didn't know operationally. And, that just propelled me. Once I understood how the wheel turned, and I already understood the numbers part. I mean, I was learning that along the way, but once I figured out how that wheel turned, Devon, it was like, it was almost like I had chains that were bound and I unleashed. It was an explosion. Yeah. I got promoted very quickly, different roles. But the reason was because I got this background that I don't think I was supposed to have. In finance, most finance professionals do not get the ability to sit at an operation, whether it be a service model or a product, learn how it's done, learn the players, learn the strategy, like actually watch the operation. It was just earth-shattering for me. It just changed everything, my whole perception. Like now I put together a budget, and when I'm dealing with the people that I'm working with, it's like, well, why did you include that in the budget? Well, I know for a fact that vendor you have, we're going to lose them in 2 quarters, because we're going to put them out. We're going to look for better terms. Oh, well, how did you know that? Well, because I've seen it happen like 100 times over. Well, have you seen it happen? Well, I've sat at negotiations with operators and we've made those decisions. So it's really kind of just blossomed me. I mean, that's really where it took me, man.
So, one of the things I hear you speak about, Trevor, is obviously a passion and a desire for more, but also a desire and an open mind to learn more.
Yes.
Tell me, how important is that in a person's success journey?
I think it's ultra important. People say, I don't want to ask the dumb question. I'm sure you heard that, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want to, listen, I have no problem. I'll ask all the dumb questions. If I'm in the room and I'm the only person that asks a question, to me, I feel good because we are all learning every day. And there's an opportunity with everyone you meet in your life, with you, Devon, with everyone I've met, since I've left corporate America into my own consulting framework. I've learned so much, financial advisors. I didn't realize how certain things worked with financial instruments. Now I know, I learned, people in the legal field. Like I was always a big fan of contracts, but, now I'm partnered with a couple of attorneys and one specific one who's really kind of told me a lot of the back end things that I didn't understand. So I think it's so important. It makes you understand the whole picture. So when you go to a project or if you go into a leadership position, you don't have those blind spots anymore. You have a pretty good understanding of how things should look. Right. And then there's an opportunity because if it doesn't look how you think it should, you can spot it very quickly. Right. So I think it's super important.
So what inspired the the transition from corporate America to being an entrepreneur?
Well, I just like most people in corporate America, you burn out, right? So at the prime of where I was at Ports America, I had a ton of locations. I was traveling quite a bit, site to site to site. I was working a lot of hours, but not the hours I was working were for someone else, right? So once you put in 80-hour weeks and they're for someone else, regardless how much money you make, you start to lose some of that, fuel you had in your tank. I needed a good reset. There was an opportunity at Ports America for me to kind of exit. And, I didn't shy away from any opportunity in my life. So I hit the ground running. I said, let's do this. I'll try it out. And then I never looked back. And it's been about 1.5 years now. So I've been doing this for about 1.5 years. I really love it.
So talk to me about, those early days, weeks, months after you exited. I mean, because you're right, there's an opportunity. You don't shy away from opportunities, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess that there were no guarantees.
Zero guy. Listen, there was right off the gate. It was like, what? I'm like, I'm waiting for that paycheck to come in. I'm like, hey, why isn't it coming? It's the 15th. I don't understand. So I think at first it's really trying to figure out what you're trying to do. So at first I tried to go back to work on a more full-time engagement level where dealing with companies, doing exactly what I was doing before, but, through a short-term business model, but it was full-time. It wasn't like what I'm doing now, which is very fractional. I'm working with 7 startups at the moment and a couple of smaller businesses. So it wasn't that model. So I think it took me a little bit to figure out what to do, like where am I most effective?
So let's back up for a minute. So when you got this opportunity to leave your job, you decided you want to take it. I guess there was a payment at the end there that allowed you to live for a while, but at the time you weren't sure what the next steps were for you, correct?
Yeah, so I opened up my LLC. And I said to myself, all right, I know what I want to do. I have at least a pretty good broad idea, but let me continue going like this, a mile wide and inch deep, as they say. I'm going to look for full-time jobs. I'm going to look for consulting opportunities. I'm going to look for board member seats. I'm going to focus being at home a little bit more where I can spend some time with my daughter and my family. But yeah, I really didn't have a good, clear direction because it does, whenever you make a leap, even your most well thought out plan is never going to be the way it is. It's never, there's always going to be a curveball that you got to look for.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like where I was at first, like really evaluating what to do next. So I really went wide pretty quick, Devon. Like I spent time dealing with recruiters, going to different networking events, meeting prospective clients, you name it. And what hit early on was some more fuller time engagements, where it was more like what I was doing, through my own enterprise. But it wasn't what I enjoyed, like working for a larger corporation full time, or almost 100% of the time wasn't what fueled me to change. What fueled me to change was having conversations with different people and solving different problems.
Mm-hmm.
I never would have thought in my wildest dreams that if you told me I'd be working with a restaurant owner, to help fix their menu pricing, look at their cash flow management, I would have never told you that. Or, hey, I'm working with a startup in the supplement space, someone who's creating a new supplement, a sleeping supplement that is, and hey, listen, I'm an opportunity to work with them. I never would have thought about that. If you rewind the clock 20 years ago, Trevor, I'd be like, no, I'm going to go work for a company for the rest of my life, like my father did for 35 years, and then just, put me out the pasture. But that's not the way it is.
Yeah. So what you're saying to me is that, you may start out life, especially for the younger ones among us, with a particular idea of what you think your career is going to be. But then as you are going along this journey and you're experiencing the change and the new opportunities that may present themselves, or the situations in our lives that may necessitate us creating new opportunities, you might find yourself on a completely different path.
Oh, without a doubt. And it's the people you meet too, Devon. Like, as I mentioned before, my mentor, Jason, at Ports America, I mean, he put me on a path that I never would have been on. But again, I had to meet him, right? So
Right.
he's a military guy, smart guy, knew everybody, but he gave me the opportunity to talk. He gave me the opportunity to listen, and then to make fun of me sometimes because he has dumb questions, but he gave me that platform, and if some people kind of went out of their way and did that, you'd be surprised. I've seen so many great things from teams happen, and it's just because you have different people in the room. Like, part of my leadership style has always been to bring different functions into the group. Let me get the lawyer's perspective. Let me get the marketing perspective. Let me get the HR perspective.
Let's unpack that a little bit, Trevor. So one is the idea of talk to us about the importance of seeking out a mentor, and I guess and the value of that, and the value of someone deciding to become a mentor as well. Yeah. So you becoming a mentee. Talk to me about that, because you have been that, and someone deciding, hey, I'm going to mentor this young person.
Oh, I mean, so when a mentor is very important through your business career and just life in general. And, I really was just hitting the wall with everything I could, throwing darts at it, punching it, trying to figure out what I could do, how to be explosive. And, you meet somebody and you get like a quick, it's almost like a light bulb. Oh man, I like what this gentleman or this lady's saying. This is interesting stuff. I always talk about Jason, but I also had another mentor too, a lady by the name of Sandy. I had a company when I was in New York that moved to Chicago. Again, another woman who gave an absolute great idea for me and let me shine, right? Mm-hmm. Saw value and allowed me to elevate myself. So I'm a mentor to young individuals as well. Some of these startups I'm working with, they're younger than I am, and they haven't seen some of the things that I've seen. And, I think it's very important that you guide them, in a positive way. I can't go ahead.
Let those people that you're leading shine? How do you let them shine?
Well, I give you an example. So like if there's an investor call, we're dealing with a presentation, I'll allow them, even though I'm cringing because I know they're saying something maybe they shouldn't, but it wasn't, spilling confidential secrets. It's more, I wish they would have did it separately, but I want them to be able to kind of stumble and then have to think a little bit on their feet and get shaken up, because I find that you speak so much more from the heart when it's not choreographed. Mm-hmm. When you're dealing with something that you have a passion, and these younger entrepreneurs, they have a passion. They're starting a business from scratch. It's not easy. And, when you're dealing with someone who's going to potentially invest money into your company, you don't want to have this robotic approach where I just read from a deck and that's all I do. Yeah. Everything's done virtually now, but it's still nice to stumble a little bit on, and say a word incorrectly or say, hey, I wanted to hire 4 people. You're only supposed to hire 2, according to what you just said. It's good to see that. It lets me know that you're not a robot and you're valued in your business. So I kind of encourage that, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, you just made reference to the atmosphere, the environment that we're operating in now. I think that was TRJ. Did it kick in earnest during COVID? And how are you navigating these crazy times?
Oh, well, I mean, at first it was obviously pre-COVID, the world was a little bit easier for me. I'm a people guy, Devon. I like to talk to people and, and be in situations. And while I'm trying to help a company, I like to be there. I like to talk to the different people in the location, understand things. So for me, it was a hard hit. There was like probably 2 months where it was just basically quiet for me. A lot of networking, a lot of priming the pump, but you have to adapt and overcome and evolve. And one of the things that I've seen dealing Zoom is the beauty of being connected so globally is dealing with people you didn't get to usually deal with. Mm-hmm. So I was talking to an attorney in London, a business owner in Scotland, someone in Australia the other day, and I get to leverage minds that I wouldn't be able to leverage. I met a gentleman in tax, great guy, which I don't know a lot about tax, but it's also nice to have like a real tax professional, and he's in Utah. I'll tell you right now, Devon, if we didn't have the COVID crisis and, I was doing what I was doing, I would have never met him. And I would have never got the snippet I did that helped me kind of move to a next client. So I think there's a value to it. And I think people need to embrace it a little bit.
Yeah. Well, what do you say is the biggest challenge in this entrepreneurial journey with TRJ?
I think for me, it's, staying true to what I think I do best. And for me to not go so wide, as I mentioned earlier, I'd love to work with everybody, but I have bandwidth. I'd love to be able to bring on somebody else down the road and kind of help, grow my business and scale it like I'm helping other businesses do. But I think for me, it's really just keeping my head in one direction and growing where I need to grow. I've always been the guy who could fix every problem you could find. Sometimes, and most of the time, it's okay to be specific in what your strengths are, because it makes you a power player. And I think for me personally, like I always need to humble and say that to myself all the time. Like, hey, maybe I shouldn't get involved in this because I'm more of a pricing guy or an operations guy. Why am I getting involved in that? So for me, I think that's one of the biggest hurdles I have.
You use a word that I've been speaking about a lot recently. I, in fact, just did a presentation on it. Humility.
Yeah.
How important, Trevor, is humility in someone's success?
It's ultra important. Ultra. I think you have to be able to understand your boundaries and understand that there's going to be mistakes made and really just be humble. I can't say it enough, and transparent. Everyone makes mistakes. We all make mistakes, and to kind of identify and say, hey, listen, even me trying to grow my business, the last thing I want to tell people is I got to focus in one direction. But it's the truth, Devon. Like, there's no reason for me to lie to anyone. I want to grow and help people and businesses. So the only way to do that is to continue to remind myself that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing every day and follow the path that I'm supposed to be on.
Awesome. Speak to us then a little bit about what it is that you do for clients.
So for me, I am a fractional CFO. And what that really means is I come in and work with business models at a fraction of the time as you would hire somebody outside. The CFO terminology is something that most mid-sized to smaller companies understand. But for the smaller businesses out there, I am a business operations professional. And really my goal is to assist in projects as well as bring your team to the next level to achieve that scale and growth that we all talk about. And in that, what I do is I strategically evaluate an organization and I sit down, or virtually sit down, I guess, and go through all the different things that I've seen happen over the years in the businesses I've worked with. The beauty of what I do, Devon, is I've had the ability to fail at a large scale. So I've got to see things that maybe people in smaller businesses haven't got to see. Like you talk about, I've owned a company for 5 generations and I've passed it down to my daughter and my son and so on and so forth. They haven't got to see, hey, listen, I've worked with a $250 million private equity deal that failed. Well, why is that? Well, I can tell you why. Because I let it failed. So now I know how to fix it.
Right.
So for me, bringing those kind of processes around, I'm a big process guy. I like to start from A and make my way to Z because most people don't take the time to evaluate it. And that's something that I feel like I pride myself in what I do and really help companies look at the gaps and really leverage them.
Yeah. One of my favorite shows on TV is The Prophet.
Oh yeah, that's a good show. Probably, yeah, right there. Yeah.
Marcus talks all the time about people, product, and process, right? And
process.
I agree that a lot of times people will have, good products, and if you have good products and great people, and you have a broken process, then your company suffers, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, because just business owners today, especially smaller ones, they're involved in everything. So they're working with finance and accounting. They're working in operations. They're working on marketing. So what helps a business grow? Obviously, marketing and scaling your revenue. But if they're one of the driving forces behind it and they're dealing with a customer service issue, you think you're taking time away from things that can be making you go in the right direction. So part of the things that I like to do is ask an owner or a CEO, whatever you want to call it, what keeps you up at night? Like, what are the most pain points you have? Because then I can start to understand where I can help. and fractional means that I'm not there every day, nor should I be. And I get to really jump in with a fresh set of eyes every time. I haven't spent 7 days in a row looking at the same spreadsheet or the same sales report, and my eyes are going to pop out of my head. I'm seeing it for the first time almost every time.
Yeah.
So it allows me to come in with that perspective and really truly be transparent.
Indeed. Dude, it's been awesome, man. Thank you for spending time with us. Sharing your pain, and your joy. The transitions that you have made, and personally, professionally, and how you're allowing companies as well to make those transitions through helping them fine-tune their processes. If someone wanted to find you to help them in that regard, how would they do that, Trevor?
So I have 2 ways. So I have a website. It's www.trjconsultingservices.com, and I can put a link in the description. And then also just email trjconsulting@yahoo.com. I'm pretty socially out there in terms of LinkedIn and some of the spots. So if anyone wants to get in touch with me, I'd love to have a conversation. Like, as I tell everybody, just because I have a conversation doesn't mean I'm going to charge you. Sometimes I want to see how we, interact. So for me, it's very important.
Right. Indeed. So trjconsulting.com?
trjconsultingservices.com.
trjconsultingservices.com. That's where you find the man, if you want your processes fixed, as it were.
Yeah.
So guys, Trevor, it's been wonderful having you. Thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you for having me, Devon.
If you enjoy this, man, if you find benefit, please leave a comment. Please subscribe. Please hit the notification button so you can get our bell, so you can get a notification every time we post a new video. And don't forget that your friends also want to be inspired. They want to be encouraged. So share it. Don't keep it. Share it. Until we connect next time, guys, Devon Harris, and this is Keep On Pushing. Thanks for watching. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you click on that subscribe button and hit that bell. You'll get a notification every time we post a new video. And don't forget, share it with your friends, man. They want to be inspired as well, right? So share it. Don't keep it. And before you go on to the next video, visit my website, www.devonharris.com. Keep on pushing.